Folks, we've got with us two of the five members of Badger's Caravan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Right now, the man that just responded is Brian Fries, and the one next to him is George.
Trainor.
Thank you.
You're welcome. With an OR, by the way.
OR, yeah.
That's
Now, the one thing I have to ask is how did the name come about? Because Badger's Caravan stands out. There's no other bands that have
Yeah.
Badger in it, but this one was actually interesting. So please, pray tell.
Yeah. It sort of started when the bass player Bill, who can't be here because he's in Fort McMurray, but he was talking about somebody who was crazy as a badger, or crazy as a rabid badger. I think that was the expression.
Badger.
And Badger just kind of stuck with us, and we started looking up the mythology of badgers, and badgers they're endemic on almost every continent, and they play a part of mythology for so many different cultures that it seemed like it would be a universal for something that was a musical idea incorporating a lot of different cultural musical identities. And then the caravan, of course, it's about the journey. If you got a caravan, going on a trip. So
the journey for the album is actually very fun. So I'm assuming that you guys had to do this during COVID. Most of the music is composed, written, and whatnot. Is that what you actually did?
It was arranged and recorded during COVID. Yeah, most of the songs were written years ago, and we tried many different ways, mostly George and I, trying to find a sound to fit the songs. And it really took COVID to shut down the gigs so that we didn't have any reason to think about the songs other than what they needed. We didn't need to think about, were they going to fit in a bar scene that we were used to playing as a blues band? Were they going to fit in a club? We just let them be whatever they needed to be, and they came up that way. And we recorded all remotely too. It was quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, you made it to Skypes, which means that your technical know-how to do it long distance paid off.
Yeah.
There's a question. I'd like to actually introduce them, virtually speaking.
Yeah, so I'm on guitar and vocals and some of the keyboard stuff. George plays drums, and Bill McCrone, who's not here in Fort McMurray, was the bass player.
Mm-hmm.
And our guest on the last track, Top of the Heap, is Mike Mookie Wilson. He's got something else in his name, Foster. Yeah,
okay.
He's playing the saxophone.
And you've got a female member who's currently doing a gig somewhere here in the Maritimes.
Yes. We've been working towards putting together a gigging band, a live band, and we've been meeting with a bunch of local musicians. One of them is Shelley Cooper-Smith. She's here in Toronto, but she's got a gig. She's a violin player and really, really, really talented lady. Looking forward to playing with her.
Now, the album itself I think it's self-titled.
Songs from Muddy Hollow.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Songs from Muddy Hollow. But the first track hit me right from left field.
Yeah.
How did you decide to write something about a hot tub, and that was Hot Tub of Horrors?
Sir, man, this is the author right here.
Every once in a while, you get those experiences where somebody says, "Man, there's a song in there somewhere." This was one of those moments where years ago I was working the night shift, and I used to stop in at the 24-hour grocery store, and while I waited for a cashier, I would read the really, really, really tacky magazines that were for sale.
Inquirer.
The Inquirer, News World magazine, and there was this one headline that was a hot tub of horrors about this giant snake that fell into a hot tub somewhere in the Florida Everglades, and
could happen.
And I don't know if it killed people or what, but when I saw it, I thought, well, what if what if it was, just something completely different, and they had actually brought the snake with them? What would happen? And it song really came together. Just
the lyrics are great in that song.
They are actually. I had to listen to it 3 times before I actually understood the whole gist of the story. But everything from start to finish for the album has this nice feel where you don't feel out of sorts. You don't feel as if you're being thrown for a loop. You're actually listening and enjoying it. I've played a few of your tracks on my blues show. How did you guys actually meet?
so Bill was the very first bass player I ever played with back in 1982, 83, and we really kind of discovered blues together, and we were going through that whole discovery process as players in Nova Scotia. We were both kind of, but not quite going to Acadia University. We were enrolled, but we weren't really going. So, yeah. Well, I grew up in Cape Breton, and he grew up mostly in I don't know, Glasgow area. I'm not quite sure where he grew up. Pictou County.
I've heard of
So
that.
you guys are all from, well, most of you two at least are from Nova Scotia.
Not me. I'm born in Quebec many, many, many years ago until I was 4. Then we moved to Ontario, smaller town in Ontario. Then I moved up to Toronto in 1989.
And you got some family roots back in New Brunswick.
I got some family roots. I have some family in Woodstock, New Brunswick, and some in Nova Scotia, in Halifax now. I have some in Prince Edward Island. We used to go to the Maritimes every summer, my parents and I, because that's where they're from. Milltown, we may or may not, St. Stephen, New Brunswick, but you've probably heard of that. That's where they hailed from. So we would go down every summer to my aunt and uncle, spend 2 weeks there, in time for my mom to get back to fill out her unemployment cards, because she worked at the high school. And in those days, you had to fill them out and sign them every 2 weeks. It was none of this online. There was no such thing, right? You had to put it in the mail. And if you didn't do that, the government wouldn't pay you. So,
So Bill, again, I played with Bill years and years ago, and we lost touch, and then kind of out of the blue, right when we started, George and I trying to figure out what to do with these songs, Bill reached out on Facebook, and we reconnected and started recording that way. And the other musicians that were hoping to join up with in the band, and I got to know through the music scene here in Toronto.
Okay, so pretty much everything was melting together over in Toronto.
Yeah.
So apart from, because there's a musical instrument, if I'm not mistaken, there's an accordion that's being used throughout most of the tracks.
Yeah, it's in there a lot. Yeah, it's actually a MIDI keyboard playing an accordion.
The Logic thing.
A Logic.
Oh, okay. Well,
sound.
It doesn't sound completely off from the natural thing. So that's even the best thing.
It worked out well.
Are you planning on doing any tours in the following months at all?
Yeah, that's the plan right now. Is we're working with Shelley Cooper-Smith and an accordion player named Joseph Landau, and another bass player, because Bill's going to be tied up in Fort McMurray for a while, to get a really good, dynamic, exciting live show going. And we're hoping to roll that out maybe towards the end of October, and then try to get as busy as we can with it.
Yeah, so the album itself is available on pretty much all the media streaming platforms. But if you want to really support you guys, buying it from your website is probably one of the best. Now, during all this where you wrote and composed and mastered and printed, you must have had some downtime to actually do some pastime.
Living in the basement, playing drums. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Hanging out with that giant dog that's on the cover.
I have a grand dog who's an Irish wolfhound. He's 180 pounds. Yeah, he's just awesome. I just took him back home yesterday. So it's my daughter and son-in-law's dog. So I babysit him quite often.
He's the dog that's on the cover of the of the album.
On the back side of the album, he kind of unfortunately moved his head at the last instant, so he's slightly out of focus, but you can tell what he is. He's the most awesome dog ever.
Yeah, Irish Wolfhounds are huge.
Yeah,
don't see them every day.
It's a good thing he's a real sweetheart.
But the interesting thing about how we did the music, basically, we did it in my basement. Brian and I, we did bed tracks, like a rough guitar thing and a ghost vocal. We have a nice real drum set in a nice soundproof room with all kinds of microphones. I'm spoiled. So we basically did that. Then that was emailed out west to Bill in British Columbia to do a bass track, which was then sent back. So this was all during COVID. And then Brian basically all together. And what you hear is basically the result of that. We had it mastered by a gentleman and mixed by another gentleman. But it was basically all homemade recording in my basement, so in Mississauga. So.
Oh, that's sweet. So no displacement. You were doing it just in your home in the basement.
Yeah.
During that period of time, you have chili cooking on the stove, being made ready for a repast.
Yeah. Sometimes it would be a couple of weeks before Bill sent something back, so then we would move on to whatever else. And for me, I like doing a lot of woodworking projects and building things. Yeah, just handyman stuff. Like this is a shed in our backyard. It was supposed to be just for storage, but I made it a little too nice, so now my wife uses it as her home office, and once in a while I get to come out here. I get to come out here and use it for vocal booth.
I always ask any of my artists, what's their favorite dish?
As in food dish?
As in food dish.
Wow. I know yours.
Are we being marked on this? Is this a test?
No, but you'd be surprised.
I'll tell you George's, and he can tell you mine. I can tell you George would probably be craft dinner.
Okay. 50 years, it hasn't killed me yet, man. You have to eat the whole box. It doesn't keep, as you know, right? It congeals. Yeah. You got to eat it. Now, that's what it does in your stomach, craft. So, yeah. Brian's favorite food, geez, I don't know. I'm kind of pizza, perhaps, might be up there. A steak, barbecue.
I like barbecue.
He loves to barbecue. He does a fabulous steak. The best steak I ever had in my life was prepared by this man. And we've known each other for 30 years. It's not like we just met yesterday. So we've been working at this musical thing for that long. Yeah, it's taken this long to really get set. Some of these songs are probably 20 years old, right?
We're really, really slow.
Yeah. In more ways.
There's nothing such as slow. If a writer takes 3 years to write a book, musicians can take as much or more if to actually have everything properly fleshed out. Because the first time that you start drafting the songs, many times over, you're tweaking it, you're changing it, you're doing certain things with it, and then the music, so on and so forth.
We had a sort of an exercise that we started when we started recording the songs and trying to find their voice. We decided we would keep arranging it and rearranging it until we all agreed that we saw this thing like Frankenstein's monster. We could see it take a breath. We could see it had a pulse of its own, and if it came alive, it was done.
Keep it.
And it was really actually, it sounds really crazy, but it was amazing how often we all sort of hit on the same, there it is, we can hear it. Again, we just let the songs become their own.
Now, you mentioned that you guys discovered the blues and you decided to do something surrounding the blues. Any particular artists or musicians or songwriters that you actually got inspired by?
For me, like one of my favorite writers has always been Albert Collins. I just think he's just so much fun. His music was, it still is. I mean, he was such a fun person to watch and to see perform, and I've always liked his music. I think he would probably be one of my number one guitar player songwriters.
Okay, and what about you, George?
I would say I like all types of music. It doesn't really matter what it is, not specifically blues. I mean, I sort of put them all up in the same. I just enjoy playing, and if it's a good groove and everybody's locking into it, then that's really what it's all about, right, as far as I'm concerned.
It's very diplomatic for a drummer.
What do you mean by that?
But what brought you to do the drums, George? I mean,
I've been playing drums since I was probably 10 or 11 years old. I started
uh-huh.
beating on my mom's television screen on the speaker part of it, which was not good.
Oh,
Put dents in it. She had a nice set of metal canisters. They were second. I destroyed those. And then, I'm an only child, so I was born late in life. And then my mom finally said, maybe we should get you a drum. So I got a red Sparkle Stewart snare drum with the cheapy little cymbal from Sears. That was the first drum I ever had. And it always just seemed to come naturally to me. I never really had to work at keeping a beat. Obviously, you have to work at your chops and your technique. But to keep a straight beat, it always just seemed to be a easy thing for me to do. So
it's always interesting when you find that one instrument that you don't know why, it just resonates with you.
It just flowed out of me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
maybe
you?
A good thing or maybe not a good thing, but
well, it's always a good thing up to a certain degree.
yeah, depends what's flowing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what about you for the guitar? When did you start?
I was probably 13 when I got my first guitar. I think before that, my parents were very strict about everybody having to study classical music, so piano lessons were mandatory.
Mhm.
And I think after grade 3 of piano, I begged for a guitar, and my dad said, "No, you want a stringed instrument? Your cousin has a violin. He will sell you for $50, and you can, but you have to learn classical music, and that's as close as you'll get to a guitar." So I said,
wow.
"Sure, let's do it." So he got me this violin, and every day he would come home from work like a 1960s father and sit on the couch while mom finished cooking dinner to read his paper. I would get out this violin and I would just scratch that bow across those strings as hard as I could. After 3 months, he said, "Okay, your cousin's got a guitar as well. He wants the violin back." But it was as soon as I got that guitar, it was heaven. I was all set.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much it. If there's anything you want to throw in that before we end the interview, you're all free to do so.
Oh, we would love to come out east and play some music out there, and we really hope to get to see everybody in person and see how this music translates to the audience.
I think you'd be a perfect fit for the new Harvest Festival over in Fredericton. Well, it used to be Harvest Jazz and Blues.
Okay.
But they rebranded it and just called it Harvest because they have all sorts of musical genres being presented during that particular festival. There's the Smoky Mountain Festival. I don't know if they're still going. They were doing it in Nova Scotia. Then there's the Edmonton Blues Festival. There's the Bay of Chaleur Blues à la Baie, which is close to Petit Rocher. So you've got more than one venue. I mean, there's the Hullabaloo over in Petit Rocher where a lot of music is played from different people, different styles, different, plain different. It was those are the ones I know of by heart, and there's possibly one close to Saint Stephen. I think it's in St. Andrews. I can't remember the title of it. But you'd have a lot of choices. It all depends on what time of year that you come around. If we actually get to see you in the Maritimes, we'll be glad to go to the show.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Really enjoy
Pleasure speaking with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to hook up with us. And glad you like the music. That's fabulous.
Yeah, I do.
It means a lot to us.
It really does. Yeah. It really does. Yeah, because it's all homemade, right? It's not in a big studio, super production, all that fancy stuff. It was basically done by us, so that adds even more grit to it, I think. So
it's from the heart.
Yeah.
Well, it's simplistic, but yet very fulfilling.
Yeah.
So keep playing it and share it with all your friends.
I will. Okay. Thank you so much, and I wish you guys a very good evening for the remainder. And also a very good tour once you start.
Thank you, Yannick.
Thank you, and the same to you.